Hello, Mr. Hall here. We're going to go over our test that we took at the end of the 6-week test. So let's look at this. Okay, so here's the code that we were given of as an example. So one of the first questions on the test is find me a mod. So here is an example of a mod right here. So what does that mean? Quick review. So a mod is division, but it's division where it only cares about the remainder, right? So it doesn't care about what you'd normally consider an answer in division. It only cares about what's the remainder after you do something, and that's pretty important. First I was like, why do you need to know that? But if you're going to tell time, you have to know what the remainder of in the hour is. In this particular example right here, we have measure mod 15. So what that is doing is basically taking the remainder of measure. And then instead of declaring that it's 0, it's asking a question. So right here we have 3 equal signs put together. And sometimes you'd only use 2 depending on the language or if you're using 0 or not. But that is called a comparison operator. So it's comparing, does measure mod 15 equal 0? It's not declaring that it is or assigning it a value. It's not an assignment operator, but it is a comparison operator. So it's comparing two different things. So does 0 equal this or whatever. So in this particular case, when measure first starts, it's equal to 1, and so we know that 1 is not equally divisible by 15. So the answer is false. So we'll jump down to the next one, and it would ask is measure mod 3 equal to 0? And that's still false. And this is still false, so it actually this is false as well. So it jump down to the last one and do that else. Okay, so the next one of the questions is to label a conditional statement. And so this would be a conditional statement, and this would be a conditional statement. And of course this is a conditional statement as well. Now, very closely related to the conditional statement, and I guess in a sense it is a conditional statement, is this one right here as well. But this is where, and I would definitely consider that a conditional statement if you labeled that on the test. Another name for this would be a loop condition, or another question on the the test was to find the loop check. So this is also the loop check. And it's also conditional. It's asking a conditional type of statement. It says, is measure greater or less than or equal to 100? And when we first start out at 1, the answer is true. So just like I said, this is a check. This is what they call a loop start, or the initialization. Initialization, right? Okay. So we had our start, our initialization, same thing. We got our loop check, or our loop condition. And then, one of the other questions was, what is the loop body? So in this particular case, everything inside here would be the loop body. It's going to execute whatever's inside there, as long as the condition is met here. Okay, and then so let's do a quick review. We got our start, our initialization, loop initialization. Then we have our check. Can I even do anything? And yes, we can do something. That's true. So we'll jump down here and we'll do our loop body. And then we'll back up. Now after we do it the first time, then we go over here and we do our step, or our iterative statement. In this particular case, we're going to add 1, the value of 1 to measure 1. And there we go. So measure is no longer equal to 1, right? Because we just added, because it completed that first part of the completed the first time, so it has to go to the step. And it will keep on stepping through, onward and upward, until it gets to 100. Okay, so one of the questions on the test was, what's the increment symbol? So our increment symbol would be this right here. Now there is a huge difference between this increment symbol and this right here. They do very similar things. We're adding 1, right? We're adding 1 to something. But here we actually change the value of measure. Here we're actually not changing the value of measure, we're just adding 1 to it, if that makes any sense. So here the actual value of measure has been affected by this increment operator here. In this particular case, it's not. It's adding 1 to measure, but it's not. But the value of measure has not changed, even though. Okay, so now let's go on to our next question here. Okay, we're supposed to find a variable. So we got several places where variables are declared. We got a variable here, a variable here. So we're declaring a variable here, we're declaring a variable here. And of course right here, we have an assignment operator. So we're saying that buzz is equal to that particular file name. Or that constant. Okay. Let's see, are we forgetting anything? So we've got, okay, one of the other questions was, give me an example of a function. There are several examples of functions here. We have this function, and we have the set tempo function. So that sets the tempo at 160. This one, another function would be, we got our fit media function and our print line function right here. And our finish it up function. And now these are actually function calls, so they're calling a function. And in our next chapter, we're going to actually create our own functions. So that will be exciting. But let's see, let's make sure we got everything. So we have our loop initialization, or our start, our loop start, or then we have our loop condition, and our loop check, and then we have our action. This is our action here, or our loop body or action, and then we have our iterative statement, where it's going to go to the next reiterate. I guess you might consider it. Or our step, so it's going to take the next step. Do it again, take the next step. Do it again, take the next step. I think that covers everything on the test. One more thing we're going to talk about, we'll talk about ints right here. So we have an int, an integer. So this particular, now when we studied Java last year, we actually would have had to type in int right there. But in JavaScript, not so much, right? JavaScript appears to be a lot more flexible when it comes to variables. Or you just say var, and it's going to figure out whether it's an integer or a double, or like one of those things that has like a decimal point in it. But here we go. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you later.